The Formosa Cafe looked like any other Hollywood hangout for decades. Frank Sinatra played piano there. Elvis Presley had his own booth. But behind the walls, something else was happening. In 2019, a restoration team discovered a hidden room that had been sealed since the 1940s. Bugsy Siegel had used it first. Mickey Cohen took it over after him. And the floor safe they found under one of the red leather booths? It stayed locked for 53 years before anyone dared to open it. What was inside tells a story Hollywood tried to forget. A vintage Pacific Electric red car from 1904 carries a story that feels almost too wild to be real. And the more you move through its past, the more it begins to feel like every shadow inside it is whispering something. Behind those walls that were later hidden under layers of drywall, Bugsy Siegel once ran a quiet but ruthless prostitution operation while movie stars sat just a few steps away, eating dinner as if nothing dangerous breathed in the same space. Mickey Cohen used the same hidden area to run a bookmaking network powered by 5 telephone lines that rang day and night. Under one of the red leather booths, a floor safe waited like a silent witness, built so people could drop money through a slot without ever touching the hands of the most feared mobster on the West Coast. The Formosa Cafe at 7156 Santa Monica Boulevard is not only a place where Hollywood legends drank, it is a crime scene that somehow survived everything thrown at it. When the 1933 group began a restoration in 2019 and pulled away the drywall, the past revealed itself slowly. Bobby Green talked about how they discovered a hidden back room where Siegel once operated, and later Mickey Cohen ran his bookie network. The trolley car sitting against the building turned out to be the oldest surviving Pacific Electric red car ever found, the last of the 800 series that once moved through Southern California like veins through a body. What people had long dismissed as a long, skinny room became something else when the truth came out. It became an artifact you could feel in your chest. As you drift backward, the timeline becomes tangled on purpose. The origin of the Formosa Cafe has always been cloudy, and that fog served the people who built their lives inside it. Archivist Max Shapovalov went through pages of bartender Lindy Brewerton's 48-year memoir and found that the popular story about prizefighter Jimmy Bernstein opening the place in 1925 did not match the real record. The earliest traceable version was called the Red Post Cafe, owned by Joe Levy, sometime in the 1920s. It sat across from a studio lot that carried its own history, a place Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks bought on February 1919, making her the first woman to own and operate a film studio lot in Hollywood. Everything changed again in 1939 when Max Goldie bought the land from Standard Oil of California. He rebuilt the place and renamed it the Formosa Nightclub. To everyone's surprise, he attached a decommissioned Pacific Electric red car to the building to make more room. The name came from the nearby street, Formosa Avenue. Brewerton's memoir even recorded that there were 3 owners at the beginning: Goldie, Bobby Goodman, and Stan Marcus. The red car Goldie chose was Car 913, part of the 800 series interurbans built between 1902 and 1906 by the St. Louis Car Company. These trains were the first high-speed interurbans in Southern California and could push beyond 70 millimeters. By mid-1940, Car 913 was already one of the last few still running. A photo from that same year shows it rolling westbound along the Santa Monica airline before Goldie removed it from service and gave it a new life as a nightclub extension. Bobby Green said during the restoration that adding a rail car wasn't stylish then. It was simply the quickest way to get more space, the same way someone today might attach a shipping container to a building without thinking twice. Goldie didn't live long enough to enjoy the kind of legend his bar would later build around itself. In 1945, his story ended violently. Brewerton wrote about how restless he always looked as he paced from one end of the bar to the other. Sometime after selling his share, he was found dead in a phone booth on Santa Monica Boulevard with a bullet in his back. The case never found an answer. Shapovalov's research added that Goldie may have lost the cafe in a poker game to the brother of Jimmy Bernstein. This small fact is what later tangled Bernstein's name in all kinds of myths. Once you look closer, the Bernstein confusion becomes clearer. Many stories celebrate a prize fighter who supposedly founded the Formosa in 1925 and befriended Chaplin and Fairbanks. Brewerton's writing, however, says the Jimmy Bernstein who bought into the cafe in 1947 was a bookie, not a boxer. She described him as quiet with his money, not nearly as generous as the other bookmakers. His real partner was chef Lem Quan, who began shaping the Formosa into the version people still talk about. Quan's life story is much easier to map. Born on January 15, 1910, he moved from Hong Kong to the United States in 1922 when he was 12. He spent years working with his father in Chinese restaurants and later served in World War II. While many believe he joined the Formosa in 1945, Brewerton's account says he actually started around 1948 or 1949. Quan stayed long after Bernstein died in 1976 and kept the place running until his own death on December 6, 1993, at age 83. His stepson, William Young, and later his grandson, Vince Young, continued the legacy until the cafe struggled and closed in 2016. Once Bugsy Siegel stepped into the story, the shadows grew heavier. Siegel arrived in Los Angeles in 1937 on Meyer Lansky's request to expand syndicate operations. By the time his floor safe appeared under a booth in 1947, he had become both a friend to studio executives and one of the most feared gangsters in the country. CBS News once reported how the hidden back office at the Formosa allowed him to run a prostitution ring while movie stars ate in the front room. During the 2019 restoration, Bobby Green mentioned the bank of telephones installed in the back room, likely linked to the studio across the street. Some records say Siegel used 5 lines for a network that stretched across gambling, prostitution, narcotics from Mexico, and the race wire service that carried horse racing results across several states. The floor safe beneath the booth said even more. Its design allowed people who owed Siegel money to walk in at night and drop their payments through a slot without ever meeting him face to face. He would collect the cash the next morning, unseen. This meant no direct handoff and no evidence tying him to the transactions. Green later said that the owners at the time must have either looked away or taken a small share from the operation. With Siegel around, you didn't ask too many questions. Siegel had already built far more than what lay under that booth. He controlled offshore gambling ships and illegal dens across Southern California. He pulled revenue from the Trans-America Race Wire service across California, Arizona, and Nevada. His extortion schemes reached into studios where actresses like Virginia Hill, Ketty Gallion, Marie McDonald, Wendy Barry, and Dorothy DeFrasso helped him gather information on wealthy actors. During his first year in Los Angeles, movie stars loaned him more than $400,000, and no one ever expected him to repay a cent. His end came fast. On June 20, 1947, just before 11 p.m., he was sitting on a sofa at 810 North Linden Drive in Beverly Hills, reading the Los Angeles Times. It was Virginia Hill's home, though she had left for Paris a week earlier after a fight. An unknown shooter rested a .30 caliber M1 carbine on a trellis 14 feet from the window and fired. Siegel died instantly from 2 shots to the head, one destroying his right eye. His associate Alan Smiley survived despite 3 bullets passing through his jacket sleeve. The case was never solved. Some believed it was tied to Flamingo Hotel finances. Others blamed race wire disputes or money skimmed from the mob. What is known is that within 20 minutes of his death, Lansky's men walked into the Flamingo and announced they were taking control. Siegel was buried in a silver-plated casket at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. He was 41. Decades passed before anyone touched the safe again. In 1999, Vince Jung found it while converting an old storeroom. It was heavy and silent, and he didn't even realize it was a safe until his father told him it had been there for ages. Its opening was originally set for February 14, 2000, but was delayed due to legal debates about ownership of any contents. The safe was finally opened on Wednesday, May 24, 2000, with reporters gathered around. Carl Belknap, whose grandfather had installed the safe for Siegel 53 years earlier, drilled through the first door, then used a key inside to open the second. The metal nameplate still sat on the surface, though the combination knob and handle had been removed long ago. Mickey Cohen stepped into power at 34, right after the shock of Siegel's assassination, and the shift happened so fast that it felt like the whole city took a breath and waited to see what this new man would do. He had been born on September 4, 1913, in Brooklyn, and that early life pushed him toward muscle work for the Chicago outfit under Al Capone. That path eventually sent him west in 1939 as Siegel's bodyguard, and each step tied him deeper to men like Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, and even Lucky Luciano, who all supported his rise. So when Siegel died, Cohen moved in without hesitation, as if he had always been preparing for this moment. The first sign of how explosive he could be came when he charged into the Hotel Roosevelt because he believed Siegel's killers were hiding there. He lifted two .45 caliber semi-automatic handguns and fired into the lobby ceiling to force them out. He shouted for the assassins to meet him outside, but silence pressed back at him. No one came. The police did, though, and Cohen ran before they arrived. That moment revealed something wild inside him, something that blended grief with fury and a need to prove he was now the one in charge. Soon after, Cohen walked into the Formosa and stepped into Siegel's old back room like it was already his. The small space tucked behind the Pacific Electric red car could hold about 20 people. Yet it became the center of a fast-growing bookmaking empire. Bobby Green explained once that the room had always been hidden, with a long row of telephones for Siegel first and then Cohen. A separate entrance kept it out of sight, which meant Cohen and his men could slip in and out without passing through the main restaurant. That secret door fed a world of gambling, loan sharking, labor rackets, pornography distribution, and blackmail schemes that reached into offices across Hollywood and City Hall. By the early 1940s, the numbers running through his disguised betting office at 8109 Beverly Boulevard were staggering. It looked like a paint store from the street, but inside it handled anywhere from $30,000 to $150,000 each day. High-stakes craps games at the Ambassador Hotel easily pushed past $150,000 per session. Money flowed toward him with the same force as the threats that followed, because power like that never arrives alone. Those threats turned into bullets and explosions again and again. Cohen lived through 11 assassination attempts, each one shaping him a little more. In August 1948, gunmen entered his office at 8804 Sunset Boulevard and opened fire. Cohen ducked into a restroom while his bodyguard Hookie Rothman was left dead with a shot that took off his head. The violence only deepened a sense of paranoia that followed him everywhere. Then came July 1949, when a shotgun ambush outside Sherry's Cafe on the Sunset Strip left Cohen and 3 others wounded around 4 a.m. His bodyguard, Nettie Herbert, died, and gossip columnist Flora Belmure walked away with minor injuries that still turned into big headlines. The worst attack of all arrived on February 6, 1950, when 30 sticks of dynamite exploded at his Brentwood home during the brutal Sunset Wars with Tom Dragna. Cohen and his wife LaVon survived by chance. After that night, he turned his house into a fortress. Floodlights, alarm systems, and weapons lined up beside more than 200 tailor-made suits. He tried to make safety out of steel and cloth, even though safety had already slipped out of reach. The final attempt on his life came in 1963 behind prison walls at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Inmate Burl Estes McDonald attacked him with a lead pipe and left him partially paralyzed. This time, there was no dramatic escape through a back door. Cohen had to live with the wounds. Yet what finally brought him down was not the bullets or the dynamite. It was the IRS. In 1951, he was convicted of federal income tax evasion and sentenced to 4 years. He walked out in 1955, only to be pulled back again in 1961 for a second conviction, this time carrying 11 years. He served in places like Alcatraz and Atlanta until 1972, when he left prison with stomach cancer. His life closed quietly on July 29, 1976, at age 62, a strangely soft ending for a man who spent decades dodging death. While Cohen built his empire in the back room, the front of the Formosa became something else entirely, a place where Hollywood royalty slipped into red booths and let the world fall away. The building sat right across from a studio lot that kept changing names through the years. Pickford Fairbanks Studios in 1919, United Artists, Samuel Goldwyn Studios in 1940, Warner Hollywood Studios by 1980. Today, it is known simply as The Lot. People filming or recording across the street only needed a few steps to reach food, liquor, or a corner where they could hide for a while. Frank Sinatra drifted in often, especially through the 1950s. Some nights, he played the piano long after closing. Old stories claim his voice still echoes near the bar when the place gets quiet. He spent many nights pining over Ava Gardner, nursing his heartbreak in the glow of dim lights. He was close to owner Lem Kwan, who treated him less like a celebrity and more like a friend who needed a place to land. Then there was John Wayne, whose legend at the Formosa turned into something that felt almost mythic. A bartender's diary found during restoration described how Wayne would drink so heavily that he passed out in a booth. The staff locked the door at closing and left him sleeping. Morning arrived, and they would find him in the kitchen making eggs, as if this were his own home. The image stayed with people because it felt so human, showing the man behind the icon. Elvis Presley found his own space there too. Booth 6 became his, and today it still displays items connected to him, including decanters gifted by Colonel Tom Parker. The story that everyone remembers is the Cadillac tip. One night, someone in his entourage forgot to leave money, so Elvis handed a waitress a Cadillac instead. Lem Kwan saved some of his checks because the signatures felt like history. Years later, Lisa Marie Presley came to the Formosa with Austin Butler and Baz Luhrmann just days before her death in January 2023, celebrating what would have been Elvis's 88th birthday. Ava Gardner spent so much time in a booth near the back that the spot was eventually named for her. She spoke often with Lem Kwan, trading stories and sharing quiet moments. After she moved to Europe in the 1960s, he still worked from her booth every night, as if she were somehow still there. One evening, much later, an older woman slipped into the bar. She was still beautiful in a soft, blurred way. Lindy Brewerton, a longtime bartender, handed her a J&B scotch on the rocks without a word, and she finished it quickly before leaving again. Lindy whispered to a regular that it was Ava. The list of names who passed through the Formosa could fill a wall. Humphrey Bogart came often with Lauren Bacall. Marilyn Monroe sat in those booths during long nights. Clark Gable visited too, but tipped lightly, a detail that amused the staff. Howard Hughes borrowed $20 once to pay his tab, even though he was a millionaire, then wandered back across the street to screen films. Terry Moore, who said she was secretly married to him, visited the reopening in 2019 and said the restoration made her heart swell. James Dean walked through that door. So did Lana Turner, Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, Buddy Ebsen, and Pearl Bailey, who would break into song at the bar. Lee Marvin was thrown out once for being too drunk. Dean Martin appeared, Ronald Reagan, Lucille Ball, Jerry Lewis. Modern names kept the streak alive. Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire. Brad Pitt liked to show up dressed like a homeless man and sit at the bar unnoticed. Johnny Depp and Tim Burton talked through Ed Wood over beers. Keanu Reeves, River Phoenix, Slash, Nicolas Cage, Bill Murray, and Bono all found their way inside. Bono even wrote a poem about the Formosa on a bar napkin when he heard it might close. He wrote about the darkness that holds the ghosts of Sam Goldwyn in the old train car. The trouble began in 2015 when the Formosa Cafe went through a renovation that almost erased everything people loved about it. The deep black and red lacquered walls were taken down, the walls filled with celebrity headshots vanished, and the entire place was covered in a cold gray that felt lifeless from the moment you stepped inside. A strange modern mural appeared where vintage charm once lived. Even the menu changed, and suddenly, avocado toast sat where old classics used to be. Later reports showed the remodel had been done without proper city permits, which only added fuel to the outrage that followed. People reacted instantly. Locals who had spent their lives walking through those doors spoke out. Preservation groups stepped in. Filmmaker John Waters joined the voices, calling it a disaster. The West Hollywood Heritage Project began looking into whether any rules had been broken because the building was supposed to be protected. A rushed second makeover tried to fix the mess, but the damage was already too deep, and the old soul of the place was gone. During the holiday season of 2016, the doors closed without warning. Vince Jung lost control of the bar, and the future of the landmark became uncertain, while the LA Conservancy searched for an owner who would save it instead of strip it apart. Hope finally arrived in June 2017, when the 1933 group signed a 10-year lease with the West Hollywood Gateway Center. Bobby Green, along with Dmitry Komarov and Dmitry Lieberman, stepped in with a plan to bring the Formosa back to life. Green had been going there since his late teens because no one ever asked for ID. This place was part of his youth, and now it sat in his hands, fragile and fading. He knew every move mattered, and he kept saying that it had to feel like stepping into another time. It needed to feel like the moment in LA Confidential when Lana Turner appears at the bar. If that scene didn't come to mind when you walked in, then the restoration meant nothing. The restoration cost $2,400,000 and stretched over 2 years and 4 months. A $150,000 Partners in Preservation grant helped restore the trolley car's windows, roof, woodwork, and the hidden beauty of the train car inside. When workers finally removed the layers of drywall hiding the trolley since 1940, they uncovered a stunning truth. Car 913 turned out to be the oldest surviving Pacific Electric red car in existence, the last 800 series interurban anywhere in the world. Green learned that the only other 800 series car had burned down the year before, which made this discovery feel even heavier. Suddenly, every detail mattered, because this wasn't just decoration. This was a piece of Los Angeles history, sitting silently behind a wall for decades. Once everything was exposed, they saw the original exterior, the old ceiling, the crow's nest where the conductor once stood, the colored glass windows, the Pacific Electric 913 lettering, and wood paneling waiting to be revived. As they kept working, they found something else. Under the walls were 10 to 12 different kinds of wallpaper. Green remembered some, but none were perfect on their own. 3 red patterns were close, but not quite right. He teamed up with designer Tina Sherrod, who had worked on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and together they created a custom pattern that blended every historical detail into one fire-red wallpaper flocked with velvet pagodas and curving shapes that felt alive. They also uncovered the famous hidden back room, the space that had once been used by Bugsy Siegel and later Mickey Cohen. Green turned it into an intimate room for 20 guests and added a rotary phone so people could call in drink orders through a small window, a playful nod to the way Cohen once handled his bookie business. Almost everything from the old Formosa had survived because Vince Jung saved it all. Boxes of more than 250 signed celebrity photos waited in storage. So did menus, Elvis Presley liquor decanters, the Lucky Buddha statue, old lanterns, Chinese decor, and news clippings collected by Lem Quan. Green kept saying that Jung saved every artifact the place ever had, and now all of it was returning to the walls where it belonged. The Formosa reopened on June 28, 2019, which marked its 80-year anniversary. That same year, the city of West Hollywood named it a cultural resource and official landmark. In 2020, the restoration earned an LA Conservancy Preservation Award that confirmed what people already felt the moment they walked through the doors. The Formosa was back, and it finally looked like itself again. The films that once used the Formosa as a backdrop only added to the sense of history, especially the 1997 movie LA Confidential. That famous scene where Bud White confronts Johnny Stompanato and Ed Exley mistakes the real Lana Turner for a look-alike wasn't in James Ellroy's 1990 novel. It was created for the film, but it captured the truth of the place. The Formosa had always been a spot where actors and mobsters crossed paths as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lana Turner really did sit in those booths, and men like Bugsy Siegel and Mickey Cohen really did sit a few tables away. Hollywood glamour and organized crime lived side by side under the same dim lights. That connection stretched far beyond one restaurant. The Formosa existed inside a web of mob influence that reached through the entire entertainment industry. The National Crime Syndicate, formed in 1931, sent Bugsy Siegel to Los Angeles to establish new rackets. Once he succeeded, more followed. The IATSE extortion scheme showed how deep the control went. Frank Nitti placed Willie Bioff inside the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and along with union leader George Brown, Bioff forced theaters and studios to pay yearly kickbacks. Every union member had to pay a 2% fund that quietly went straight to Chicago. Studios accepted these deals because they wanted labor peace. They kept wages low and hours long, and in return, the mob held off on strikes. When real disputes appeared, violence followed. The 1945 Hollywood strike became a battle between mob-controlled IATSE and the reform-focused Conference of Studio Unions. On October 5th, now remembered as Black Friday, the streets turned violent, and 300 police officers were called in to stop the chaos. CSU leader Herbert Sorrell was even struck in the face with a heavy chain. Corruption inside the LAPD made all of this possible. Many officers worked directly with the mob, and in 1939, a major purge removed 23 high-ranking officers suspected of deep criminal ties. These events helped shape Ellroy's fiction because they explained how figures like Siegel and Cohen thrived unchecked. They also explained why the Formosa, with its mix of movie stars and gangsters, felt like the real center of a hidden world.